Hello and welcome to the second part of this edition of RAD TV UK. I'm Ian Henshall. In a minute we have Roy Hunter reporting on the gruesome murder in Woolwich and ensuing media frenzy. First, here are a couple of pieces of other terrorism related news. Al-Qaeda was in bed with the CIA right up to the 9/11 attacks, alleges FBI translator Sybil Edmonds, who says Ayman al-Zawahiri, the man now in charge of Washington's supposed mortal enemy Al-Qaeda, was being flown all over Central Asia as a guest of the US in the weeks up to the 9/11 attacks. In the latest twist of this story, investigator Nafeez Ahmed has revealed that Sunday Times investigators corroborated Edmonds' bombshell allegations, but the story was suppressed by order of owner Rupert Murdoch's managers. Following the Boston bombings, the questions are multiplying. First, the picture of an alleged terrorist with the wrong-coloured rucksack. Second, the other alleged terrorist, apparently pictured, captured alive, not dead. Now we have two elite FBI officers on the team that hunted the accused, killed in an apparent training accident, and one of the accused's associates shot dead while being interviewed by the FBI. Anyone for Russian roulette, or should we call it Washington roulette? Now here is Roy Hunter to report on what might have been an ugly local murder in South London, but instead turned into a week-long media frenzy. Roy, you're saying that the media frenzy served to mask the big lie, and the lie is that the murder was unconnected with British foreign policy.
This is the big lie, and it's a lie that we're told over and over again, and it's a lie that they have to maintain, really. I mean, the horrific murder of drummer Rigby in Woolwich last Wednesday was it was a peculiarly British scene. A British Army soldier lay dead in the middle of the road. By some accounts, his head had been hacked off with kitchen knives and kitchen cleavers, and his murderer, meanwhile, just talks calmly to the passers-by while they video him. You know, he's got all these bloody tools in his hands, and an elderly lady just wheels a shopping trolley straight through the middle of the scene like she's a stage technician in the middle of some kind of rehearsal. Then we've got other people tending the body of drummer Rigby, while the seemingly unperturbed as the murderer stands over them, strangely unthreatening, explaining but not excusing his actions in a calm and collected manner. Many have described Michael Abajalelo as a crazed killer, but it's obvious from this video footage that it's just not the case. If anything, Adebayo is a cool, collected killer. He reminds me more of Anders Breivik, the Norwegian who murdered 77 people when he bombed central Oslo and then opened fire at an island youth camp. This is kind of a new type of killer, really. This is somebody who's got a clear political message and sees murder really as their only way of getting their message across.
But surely in a democracy such as ours, there are legitimate ways of getting a message across to the public?
Yeah, but are there, Ian? You know, I was very interested watching BBC's Question Time on the night after the murder, and it was from Belfast, and we had Theresa Villas, the Conservative Northern Ireland Secretary, saying, "We have to combat the poisonous narrative of hate that these terrorists feed off, to demonstrate that our arguments are the strong ones and that we are a vibrant, forward-looking democracy." Well, yeah, I don't look at radical Islamist sites on the internet, and in a way you can't. It's like if I was writing about paedophilia, I wouldn't go on the internet.
Because you'd leave a trace, and then they'd start.
I wouldn't want to. You know,
it
gives ammunition to my enemies. And so, I just don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
But I imagine that they're not saying go and kill British soldiers, because then, very rightly, they'd be locked up immediately.
Yeah, of course not. No.
So I can only imagine that what they're actually talking about is that British foreign policy abroad is murderous, really.
Yes.
And frankly, Ian, British foreign policy abroad is murderous, in my opinion. Yeah, our arguments aren't strong ones, really. Our arguments are quite weak ones. And it's not a vibrant, forward-looking democracy, as Villas says. You know, this is a compromised democracy, really, and it's only held together by lies.
It would certainly seem extraordinary to somebody in Afghanistan, who we're supposed to be winning the hearts and minds of, that we are so concerned about one British soldier dying that we've turned over the whole of our media for a week. You know, with no doubt that there'll be an anniversary issues about it next year as well. When, you know, we're killing them on a daily basis.
We are killing them on a daily basis, yeah. But we had Boris Johnson quoted in the Huffington Post, and he said the fault lies wholly and exclusively in the warped and deluded mindset of the people who did it, and that is a lie. The act of murder of drummer Rigby was despicable and hateful, and I'm not condoning it in any way. But to say that that was a warped and deluded mindset, it's not right. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he spoke a truth there. And it's a very uncomfortable truth, but it's a truth that the British people need to hear, really.
Which is that the British foreign, we cannot live in our little island cocoon and at the same time go around onto the other side of the world dropping bombs on people.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's an equation, and that is British foreign policy equals domestic terrorism, and that is such a simple equation, and it really is as simple as 2 points.
And some people might say, well, we've got such a task of, you know, bringing civilization to Afghanistan that we've just got to suffer a bit of revenge here in Britain.
Sure.
I mean, that would be a logical position, but they're not saying that. They're saying we've got a task to bring democracy to Afghanistan. We're going to do it by bombing people. And if anybody takes revenge against us here in Britain, we're going to deny that they've got a political motive.
Well, let's just look at what we are doing, shall we, briefly, over in the Middle East. You can Google Madeleine Albright, 500,000 children, and she was asked if she thought, this is the lead up to the invasion of Iraq, before we even invaded, just the sanctions killed 500,000 children, and she was asked on video if she thought that was worth it, and she said yes, we think that was a price worth paying. The Stanford Law School did a study very recently which looked at the drone killings, and they found that 98% of people killed in drone killings now are innocent civilians.
They went and counted them, didn't they? They actually went to the villages and got reports.
And the way we get around that, or the way the Americans get around that, is they now say anybody who's dead on that scene of male military age, they are then
is by definition
a militant. In that same Question Time programme, we had Vincent Coker, the Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, saying, I'll quote from him, "In our democracy, if you want to change things, there's a way of doing it. You can protest, you can legitimately protest, and you can try and bring about change." But, you know, is this true? You know, I mean...
Well, we all went on the protest against the Iraq War, which was opposed by the vast majority of the public.
Yeah. But we saw with this killer of drummer Rigby, that MI5 put enormous pressure on him to infiltrate Muslim groups, to use him as an informer, for him to inform on his friends. And we were told by the media that that's commonplace, that that's what MI5 does, and that is what MI5 does. Now, what you've got to think is that, yes, that information, that intelligence they gather, yes, it is used to stop terrorism, but it's also used to undermine protest movements.
So I'm just wondering if actually this could be part of the story. Because if MI5 are going to this guy saying, we're going to make your life hell, and I think there have been accounts of people who say that that is what they've said to them, we're going to make your life hell. And hell might involve getting tortured in Kenya, which is apparently a possibility as to what happened to him. Then might he not think, well, I'm going to go down fighting, I'm not going to be an informant, I don't want to have my life made hell, maybe I'd be better off in a prison cell doing a sentence for murder. I mean, in a sense, that's almost irrational. Maybe, I mean, perhaps people should be asking whether MI5, in a sense, created this event unintentionally.
Sure. I think they certainly have... they're complicit in it in some possibly unintended way, but I do think they are a little...
Thanks very much, Roy.
Okay, thank you.
That ends the second part of this edition of RAD TV UK. In the final part, we have some possible good news stories. In Washington, the prospects of a real move against the banks, and in the EU, police raids on oil companies suspected of price fixing.